Welcome. Today, we are going to talk about technological transformation in manufacturing, specifically the roles of containers and virtualization. And I'm excited to welcome two of my Red Hat experts on this topic, Dave Rapini and Ed Hutchinson. Dave, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Dave Rapini, I'm with Red Hat. My focus area of what I work on here is being the strategist on how Red Hat is moving into the industrial sector.
Great. And Ed?
Hi, Ed Hutchinson. I'm an edge industrial technologist, and I've been with Red Hat for about 5 years, and I've worked in the open source space for about 25.
Awesome. And so just to set some context for today's discussion, I was hoping, Dave, you could help us define modernization specifically within the industrial space.
Sure, I'd love to. I've been in industrial automation for quite a few years. I would say that right now is an exciting time. It's almost a revolution going on in the industrial space. So what I see is a lot of the legacy systems that were built on proprietary hardware, proprietary software packages with closed ecosystems are starting to open up. And they're opening up because, the cost of maintaining those systems was so very high. The challenges on upgrading them and interacting with best-in-class products was challenging. So I'm seeing a more movement into a software-based architecture now that's really exciting and really revolutionizing how industrial and automation is actually performed.
Yeah, definitely, Dave. And one of the waves of modernization that took place in the computing space over the past 25 years was really based around commoditized hardware. And that really opened up a lot of avenues for being able to build technical compute environments at a fraction of the cost that they once cost. And so, over the past 10 years or so, 15 years, with the onset of cloud technologies, we've seen a wave of software-defined modernization techniques that are starting to blend their way down into the OT sector.
Yeah, and a big part of that too is that you mentioned cloud. Connectivity is becoming a huge component of that revolution, of that change. Yeah. So you see all of these industrial systems starting to get connected up to clouds, up to on-prem data centers, and delivering a lot of that data up the stack. And 10 years ago, if you'd have talked to an IT OT engineer about what's happening in your market and what's this IT OT convergence thing, they would have talked about network connectivity being the primary focus of that IT OT convergence. But now you see with the new technologies coming down the pipe from IT and moving into the OT sector, a much bigger push to be more than just that. It's about software updates and software changes and making systems more flexible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, as we think about the opportunity that you're describing, can you share a bit more around the role of containers and containerization in supporting that value? Ed, maybe if you could take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So containerization is kind of this next wave of modernization technique. Initially we saw it with virtualization, and containerization takes it a step further in that, you build images that are associated with application dependencies. So no longer do you have to rebuild systems with the kernel and, a swap file and all of those different ways of setting up a traditional virtual machine. You really just wrap around the container, the application dependencies and the binaries associated with that. So what containerization gives you the ability to do is to try out new techniques when it comes to updating. And maybe if you put out an update and it doesn't work very well, you're able to roll back to a last known good state with that technology. And it's just a new way of being able to do things in a non-final fashion that allows you a lot of agility when performing a lot of these sysop operations around anything that you're working on.
Yeah, and that really translates into actual real dollars too at the end of the day, right? When you think about downtime, containers boot time is like half of the requirements for a full image or recovering. When you need to patch something, the patches are usually smaller because they're microservice based. So, updates are quicker and easier to come out. So your downtime for those are significantly less as well. And just in general, the portability of those containers that Ed's talking about makes it so that you can move and load balance your system and make your resources less costly, because now you can load balance your architecture easier, and you can buy they share resources better with containers, so you'll see a lower cost of ownership of the overall architecture as well.
Absolutely.
Great.
Hey, one other point on that, Kendall, before we move on, I just wanted to hit there is a but in that context, right? And the real challenge here is, there's a huge installed base of software packages that aren't containerized out there today. And, the opportunity to virtualize environments is still there, and people still want to virtualize environments as entire virtual images of those software packages. Because they're monolithic, they're giant, they're not yet ready for containerization. But there is an intermediate step here on virtualization that lets you run those images as sort of a container inside some of those products, so that they can be integrated with the other container packages. And then as those packages migrate and slowly become more containerized, they can still function. So there's a great opportunity here as well, that virtualization isn't exactly going away. It's going to be around for a long time. The install base is still huge for that. But you'll see us starting to make that technology more container-like, so that it can share the space and real estate and get some of that value out of what you can do with containerization in a full virtual image.
Absolutely, Dave. And one of the key things is you're going to have a single plane of administration with that. So it allows you to take the baby steps between some of these transitional technologies with the same management mechanisms that you use. At the end of the day, the key is not having to train people on a bunch of different techs. They can focus their time and their effort on understanding a single platform and being able to manage disparate types of workloads along the way.
Absolutely.
Great. And Ed, you mentioned single platform, and I think that's a good segue to Red Hat and the value and the role that we play here. So would you mind, maybe Dave, if you can elaborate a bit more on the specifics of how Red Hat is supporting some of these efforts that you've described?
Yeah, I'd say Red Hat's biggest value proposition in this space is the fact that what we do is always open source. So, that intellectual property is all open source. We provide the assistance on the technology. We help you support it. We help you build patches and make the system work and maintain it simply. But at the end of the day, you don't get that vendor lock that's been extremely costly in the OT space, where you have to go back to a specific vendor when you want to add content or expand or update or maintain. This gives you that open experience and allows you to integrate the other products very easily in an open source methodology, which is a big value Red Hat brings.
Oh, definitely. And not just the interoperability that it gives, what it also does is we definitely work in the upstream, and upstream in open source means that's what gets developed first. And then over time, what we do is we refine some of the code base so that it's supportable in a lot slower update fashion. We implement backports to patches so that you don't have to implement breaking change on a common code base. So what that means from an enterprise perspective is it offers stability for a long period of time while also keeping you secure.
Yeah. One other great value that we bring to the table too is there's OT is very risk averse, right? There's always fear of the unknown and uncertain, and nobody wants to be version 1 of software. The great thing that Red Hat brings to this table is these are not new technologies for us or the IT environment. So the technologies we're talking about, these platforms now that can run this containerization and run this virtualization. Those are, we've got a lot of runtime with that for 10 years already in the environments, running those in the IT space. They're new in the OT space, but it's not like the technology's brand new heading into OT. So that runtime, that experience that we have on using that software and deploying those systems is valuable now for the OT guys as well.
Great. So guys, I think we're at time. I have certainly learned a lot about modern manufacturing and the roles of containers and virtualization. So I appreciate your time. And I hope our viewers will catch us for our next edition of Modern Manufacturing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kendall.
Thanks, Kendall.